Alright, we're back. So I wanted to talk about how the iPad can be the most useful tool for a musician, for a synthesist, for a starting producer, and really for any kind of music related job. I know it's kind of cheating because it's almost like a computer, but it's not really one. Because think about it, you use your computer for a lot of stuff. So you have a lot of files, a lot of pictures, and a lot of whatever you have. Like personally, my whole life is in there. So if I was to lose it, I would not be happy about that. Whereas the iPad, I mean, I wouldn't be happy either, but it would be a bearable loss, you know? They're not inexpensive, but they're reasonably priced, especially with all of the uses we can get out of that machine. It's got a great battery performance, and if you've never used one, the touch screen it's top notch, really. I know a lot of people have been talking about this, and then I know I'm not the first to cover this, and I'm glad I am not, because this device really lends itself to music creation. It's got all of the things you need. Like, if you're a starting musician and you were thinking of what kind of computer you should buy, I would totally recommend an iPad instead of a computer, even an old iPad. You can actually find pretty good deals with used iPads, and I found that even if you buy a new iPad, you really get a bang for your buck. You will get a lot of firmware updates after you buy your first iPad, even if you don't buy it new. You're gonna be pretty much fine. The hardware specs of the thing are more than enough for you to get started. There are some limitations to it. I mean, you have to always remember to turn off your AirPort and your Bluetooth connections because you don't want to get an email during a concert. You have to remember that. You have to always bring your camera connection kit. This is the camera connection kit too, so it allows you to connect any USB device to a lighting port. Recently, the industry is adopting a weird trend of getting rid of the headphone ports, which is a weird thing. Bluetooth audio has a big latency and it won't make the cut. If you're trying to deal with an interface and also with any kind of controller, you will probably need a USB hub, which I know it's not ideal. No one wants to be carrying hubs anywhere, but you know, it's one of the limitations the hardware has. Otherwise, it's pretty sturdy. This is my actual iPad. If you can see that I have this organized in different categories: synth, beats, workstation, samplers, and it becomes very intuitive. You can use it as a standalone thing. You can connect it to a computer if you're in a studio environment. You can, you know, make your beats or play around with sound. Obviously it's got an integrated speaker. It's got this fabulous touch screen, and really I don't think there's a miss, because you get sound modules, you get synthesizers, you get portable DAWs, you get study apps like Metronome or Ariel Book. There's a lot in there for you to explore, and I wanted to take a look into that. This particular synth is a really interesting one because it uses wavetable synthesis, which is the use of this kind of sweeping oscillators through a 3D waveform. And as I said before, this touch screen allows you to express yourself in such a different way. There's
I mean, there's hardware that can do this, but it's so much more expensive, and this is really intuitive, you know? Yeah, and we have some classic emulations of some of Korg's greatest synths. We have this IMS-20, which is of course an emulation of the legendary MS-20. There's also the emulation for some other legendary synths. Like we have this FM Player 2, which is of course FM synthesis. This one's specifically the X7. And yeah, you saw me missed a note there because yeah, sometimes this touchscreen can be tricky, but there is really no way of missing if you're using another kind of controller. And there are, of course, these experimental kind of synthesizers designed exclusively for the iPad, which really take advantage of the touchscreen format and take it to a different level. This Animoog is really good. It's so expressive, and it's actually a new kind of synthesis designed specifically for this app and designed specifically for the iPad. And this one's pretty awesome to play with a controller, but you can also get more of it if you play it from the actual touchscreen, because it has these sort of virtual plates which have three-dimensional expression, which is you can press it and of course it outputs a sound, but it takes into consideration the left and right movement as well as the up and down. And of course there's the sampler. This is kind of a legend in the iPad terms and in sampler terms. You have a kind of a really complex interface, but it's really intuitive, so it allows you to do a lot of stuff with just intuitive gestures and, explore new sounds. So this sample is just me singing notes in an untuned fashion, as I tend to do.
What I think is great about the iPad is the fact that there's a lot of developers behind it. There's a lot of teams working to make the best apps possible. You have the usual suspects. You have Korg, you have Native Instruments, you have Moog, you have Reason. There's a lot of big companies developing software for the iPad. There's a lot of independent developers working to create the most original content, the most original apps, and really they are succeeding at it. We have the sampler, which is a software that uses the touch screen of the iPad in a way that no other software does, and in a way that not other software would be able to, because the software is developed around the hardware of the iPad, and it really takes advantage of it. We have Borderland Granular, which is another perfect example of a sampler that uses the interface of the iPad in a unique way. And those apps were created solely with the iPad in mind. And I think it's pretty unique. And I think these are the kind of devices that are pushing the industry forward. Stuff like Core Gadget and its whole integration with Ableton Live. There's a lot of specific peripherals from my rig, which were among the first ones to actually develop hardware with the iPad connection in mind. To all the new peripherals there are, you can pretty much grab any USB compliant audio interface and connect it to the iPad via the camera connection kit, and you're pretty much done. Like, you can use the thing even if it has 16 ports or 2 ports, it doesn't matter. You can connect whatever kind of guitar or microphone. It's a really useful way of creating things, and it's a creative way of messing with your brain, and it's a way of rewiring the way you think of music. And I think that any kind of hardware that makes you think in a different way is really valuable. Alright, so that's it. If you like the video, subscribe, hit like. Have you had a different experience to what I've had? Leave me a comment, let me know if you've used it before with musical purposes. Let me know what you think, and see you next week.